Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to These Go to 11. Once again, I'm Nathan Bell. Zach Bartle's joining me today. Zach, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, I am sitting on my bed, just, to give you kind of a not too much of a risque, picture of what I've kicked off my shoes. I'm on my bed and I'm staring at my television, which is, I've got the Amazon Fire Stick, and it's like going through a series of high definition landscapes of exotic places.
Nice.
Or picturesque places. It's so calming.
and then I called you up and just totally blew it out of the water.
It reminds me of the scene screen on Back to the Future 2, only, not crappy.
Right. Only more advanced, not 1980s. Nice. So let me ask you, Zach, we didn't actually talk about this at all, but what are you watching these days on your Fire Amazon stick there?
Oh, man, I've gotten into, two things. One, I burned through Flint Town. Have you heard of this?
No, what is it?
It's a Netflix original doc series. I think it had 8 eps, a documentary about Flint, Michigan, which is, 45 minutes down the road from where I am now. Okay. 45 the other way from where I grew up. So, I mean, a place I've been many, many times. You probably know one thing about it right now, which is, of course, maybe a couple things. You can't drink the water and, crime and violence. Right, okay. Amazing documentary. I mean, I recommend it for everybody. It blew my mind. It showed just how, you can have every great intention, the commitment, the principles, but the governmental machine can come in and just clip your wings and make a liar out of you. It was a really fascinating thing. Huh.
Neat. Now, so are you a big documentary guy?
Not really, no.
Okay.
It's rare for me to. My wife is more. My wife will literally watched a documentary on Netflix about Tupperware, like the history of Tupperware. I was like, well, that sounds really riveting. Yeah.
That's what I put on when I need to get to sleep at night.
Dude, one time I used to have crippling insomnia, and one time I laid down. A friend of mine told me to do this. They're like, go on Netflix, go into the documentaries, find something you have no interest in, and then close your eyes and sort of try to pay attention and let it ease you off to sleep. So I brought up a documentary about Paul Mitchell.
Okay.
The Hairspray guy or whatever. Yeah. It was fascinating. This guy's early life was I was riveted. I was up all night watching Paul Mitchell.
Well, this didn't work.
The other thing I'm watching right now is called Sneaky Pete. They just came out with season 2 of it. It's Amazon original.
Oh, yeah.
It's a con man story.
Yeah. It's is it Giovanni Ribisi? Is that who's in it? Nice.
Dude, that guy's got the best face ever.
Oh, yeah.
Old timey 1920s like gangster face. I really have always liked him. Ever since he was Phoebe's brother on Friends.
Yes.
But this one, get this, man. So I was just pointing out to my son that the old Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies have one member of the band on That Thing You Do as the dad.
Yep.
And the new movie has a different member of the Wonders from That Thing You Do as the dad.
Really?
And then I bring up Sneaky Pete, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this one's got the old drummer from That Thing You Do, Giovanni Ribisi, and then the bass player, Ethan Embry, who was Mr. 90s.
Yes.
He was everything in the 90s. He's on it, too. So all we need to get the band all the way back together now is the lead singer, who just fell off the map. I don't know.
Don't know where he went.
Man, what are you watching?
I've got a bunch of different things going on right now. My wife and I, because we're teachers, we tend to just kind of sit and watch stuff and grade as we are, as we're watching, we're grading. So, we're doing The Flash and all that stuff, typical cable stuff. But on Netflix, I'm sorry, not on Netflix, on demand, I'm watching Into the Badlands. Do you know what that is?
I do. I haven't really gotten into it, though. Okay,
yeah. So I saw season 1 some point last year, and season 2 finally came on demand. So I've been watching that, and that's just a fun show. I mean, it's well done. I forget the actor's name, but he was actually just in the latest Tomb Raider movie that came out, which I saw, which was fantastic, by the way. Highly recommend it. And it's, it's kind of like this Western kung fu story.
Yeah, Ted Kluck has been raving about that. I've meant to check it out.
Nice.
I haven't got to it yet, though.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely worth it. And then I'm still like a big kid at heart, and so I love cartoons. And so I've been watching the Netflix reboot of Voltron. Do you remember Voltron?
Do I remember me and my son watching season 5 in its entirety in literally 16 hours? I do remember that.
Nice.
Dude, nice. I was on a Reformed Baptist. No, it wasn't Reformed Baptist. It was the Wretched Facebook group, right?
Okay, yep.
Wretched. And I don't know how I got into some, arguing online is the dumbest thing you could do. and in kind of the... When you have like pulpit and pen type people around, it's even dumber.
Right.
But I wound up like there was this bit where they were just mocking Toby Mac for having the dumbest lyrics in the world, but they were choosing like in between verses, like got the funky Jesus music or whatever, and like
right.
and just saying basically this is all worthless. And I made the stupid mistake of defending Toby Mac and saying he actually has some pretty decent stuff. And this guy who claimed to be a pastor as well, he must have like clicked on my name, gone on my page, seen that I had posted about Black Panther and I had posted the trailer for the new Voltron thing because I was excited to watch it with my son.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that made me, and so he starts going off on how I'm not fit to be a pastor because I haven't put childish things behind. I'm a boy pastor. I'm like, dude, I'm a boy pastor with. I'm about to turn 40 in a month. I'd like to be a boy pastor right now. But I mean, just like to him, it was a really big deal that I had those two things on there. And I thought, man, you must be fun at parties.
I know, right?
And I immediately I just left that group. And I think in the wake of that, I left about 4 or 5 others where I'm like, I don't have time for like the joy police in my life.
Yeah.
I'm so through with that whole scene. I'm so tired of the discernment blogs and podcasts where all we do is, just tear everybody down and stuff. I mean, there are people that are so far out there. Yeah, they need to be exposed. You got your Osteens and stuff.
Sure.
But, when we get to the point where we're like, oh, let's see if we can find something on John Piper. Yeah, I'm out. You know what? This is silly. So, all that to say, Voltron has been spectacular.
Yeah. I've been enjoying it. I binged the first 4 and now, but I did those during the summer. And so now that I'm back in school, it's a little more difficult. So I think I just I finished number 5. Actually, just before I came on the podcast. So,
dude, did you watch one in between the two? Meaning between the 1980s one and the new one, there's been 2 in between there.
Yes.
There was one crappy 3D like Lawnmower Man CGI one.
Yep.
That had Tim Curry as Zarkon.
I do know what you're talking about. Yes, I didn't watch much. I think I might have watched like the first one, but yeah, I was a huge fan of the original, and then this one has just done, in my opinion, this one's done a fantastic job at rebooting and setting it up. I've loved it. So.
There was one a few years ago called Voltron, Voltron Force.
Oh,
and,
okay.
It was like cadets that were going to take the place of the guys in the Lions. I watched that with my son too, and man, he got so into it, and I thought it was so cool that I was into Voltron in the 80s. He could be into it in the late '80s, early 2010s.
Yep.
And that could we could find common ground in that way because our generation is so nostalgic. We can't let anything die.
I know. Well, every once in a while, because Netflix still has He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, I'll pull that up and I'll watch some episodes of that. I'm just waiting for. Do you remember Brave Star?
No.
What's
that?
Brave Star was it was this another space movie, but it was like all about kind of like a Texas Western. And so you had Marshall Brave Star, who was this Indian who could harness the power of the wolf and the bear and had, sight of the hawk and all that stuff. And so he
sounds PC, man.
Dude, it was awesome. But actually what was really cool is like shows like that. And a lot of people don't realize this. And I mean, I'm not going to say, they were, works of art or anything like that, but they were fun, but they were also educational. I mean, Brave Star dealt with like drug overdoses and things like that. And like, I remember having a conversation with my dad watching this when I was home after school, and saw this happen, and it was like, well, I guess we're talking about drugs today, and why you shouldn't do drugs, and and
a very special Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
Battle Cat is hooked on meth.
He's cooking the meth. Man at Arms is the one who's hooked on it.
Dude, I think Skeletor would be cooking the meth. I wasn't allowed to watch He-Man after I had a nightmare. I mean, this was on when I was like 7, 8, 9 years old. And I remember I had a dream that there were snakes all over. And my mom saw like 10 seconds of a He-Man episode, and there was snakes in it. She was like, oh, that's why you had the dream. So I had to watch it on the sly on a black and white tube TV in my dad's workshop in the basement.
What are you doing down there? Nothing, Mom.
Nothing. I can quit anytime.
That's right. That's hysterical. Dude, you had a perfect setup for what we're going to be talking about today. Kind of on the backhand, on the sly, which we're going to get to our topic. First, I want to, shout out to Missional Wear for all that they do. You mentioned the 5 solas last week, Zach, and they have tons of great products. I was just on there again recently looking at all the different beer mugs that they offer. I enjoy collecting beer mugs, and so looking at the different collabs that are going on. I'm hoping that Gut Check will get theirs soon and get it on their own page as opposed to not being buried in the Happy Rant.
Nathan, you can get all sorts of Gut Check stuff now. There's journals. There's
is it up?
Nope.
Oh,
nope. You can get a T-shirt though. What I
from
want,
Happy Rant.
Nathan, I might do this. I'm going to Doc and Devo Conf next month. Actually, a month from today is when it's happening.
Oh, nice.
I might have to get made a custom shirt with the Happy Rant and These Go to 11 logos on the back. just so I can rep them both at the same time.
That would be awesome. I
don't want to get sued by Missional Wear. They're probably going to be there, but
well, hey, that would be a perfect opportunity to Jeff, what's going on, man?
Right. If you'd make it, I wouldn't have to bootleg it, buddy.
That's right. That's funny. That's funny. But definitely check out Missional Wear. Tons of great products. I enjoy going on there every once in a while and just kind of scrolling through and looking around the different things that they have. They have tons of stickers too. I know that there are a lot of sticker junkies out there who love putting them on everything. I honestly am not one of those people. But if I were, they would have tons of them, from Spurgeon quotes and sayings to Luther to Calvin, and many more. So check out Missional Wear.
I got a Missional Wear sticker on my laptop. It's Spurgeon and Calvin's faces, that little logo.
Yeah, I have the same one on my laptop.
Really? So maybe you're a little bit of a sticker junkie.
A little bit. I've got it over the Apple, so that way I don't give Apple any product placement on anything.
And you can control the light that it's beaming forth from the. I put that on, and I think that was the one that came free with something that I got from.
Yes.
From Missional Wear. They're like, here, put this on and promote us. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, I'll do that. I can handle that. So yes, check out Missional Wear, longtime sponsor. Also, don't forget that if you write a review for the Gut Check podcast, Clinch, or These Go to 11, I'm going to be at the end of March. So it's still going on till the end of March. I will be sending out a free gift. I'm kind of keeping that in the bag on what it is. as we get closer to the end of March, well, I guess we're kind of close. But when we get closer, probably next week, I will make the announcement of what I'll be giving away. And so just make sure that you leave an iTunes review for us. And make sure you say something, because that's the biggest thing. It's nice if you give like 5-star rating, but it's even better if you actually write a comment. And I've had a couple people ask me, if we've left one before, can we leave another one? Yes, you can. And actually, I would encourage you to do that. If you left one early on in this podcast, leave another one, updated one that maybe has told us how we've improved or how we've, de-evolved.
I miss
something.
Greg.
Yeah. So
that guy's not cutting it.
What's going on here? Podcast has gone to trash. I
joke so that you laugh so you don't cry.
That's right. That's right.
No, dude, I went I was telling Ted, I was like, hey, dude, I'm taking over for Greg Dusher. He's like, what? Who? Huh? So he's like, that thing's a big deal. I've heard of it. And I said, yeah, they've got a lot of listeners. They've got a lot of podcast reviews. So I bring it up. And I don't know about you, but I always go right to like the 2 1-star reviews.
Yes.
Just to see what people might say. I mean, like, who could have a beef with this? And so I go and I look, and one of them said, like, I love it, but the pacing's too slow.
Yes.
And if they could speed up their guests that they have on and keep them moving along, they might become as good as the Happy Rant or the Gut Check podcast. And I swear that wasn't me who left it.
I did. I remember seeing that one. Dude, and now that you remind me that they said that, well, you know what? We've got someone from Gut Check. So, hey, we're moving the pacing along now, baby.
Boom. Yeah, you know what? I've had 2 cigars today, and I'm a little jittery. I might be too fast.
Match that with 2 espressos, and man, we'd be at light speed.
That's the only way to enjoy a fine cigar is with some coffee. I don't get these Scotch guys. It doesn't. No thanks.
See, I do. I'll do Scotch occasionally, but I actually prefer bourbon. I enjoy a nice bourbon with it.
All right. I mean, it depends on the cigar. You get something. There are some things that naturally pair well.
Yeah.
In that direction.
Yeah.
One of these days, man, we got to get together and have a cigar together and do a live app.
That would be fantastic.
How far are you from DC?
Oh, I'm maybe an hour.
See, we've been talking about bringing my boy, having a family vacation, going to DC, going to the Museum of the Bible, doing the whole thing. And we're going to do that sometime soon. You and I got to connect then.
That would be awesome. And hey, if you're looking for a cheap place to stay, we got a house here that you'd be more than welcome to use. So, quick
Nice.
drives day in, day out. We've had friends do that before who have driven on through. One of our friends, when they were homeschooling their kids, they were like, hey, we want to, spend the week in DC kind of touring around, can we stay at your place? And so, if you're interested in saving some money, we got the room.
Dude, I'm Dutch.
So you're definitely interested in saving money.
Oh, yeah. I'm Dutch, and I'm a Calvinist, and I'm from West Michigan. They call the town that my family hails from is literally called Holland. That's how Dutch I am. And I'm absolutely related to everyone who lives there.
That's fantastic. Oh, my word. That's hysterical. Oh, man. So, dude, going into what we were going to be talking about today.
What was my great segue like 25 minutes ago?
Yeah, it was, you were talking about, those people who get on and, just look at stealing the joy out of everything. And to me, equally combining with that are people who feel the need to I don't even know what the term is, but just boast in someone else's demise or misery. I see that happen often. I think of, and what prompted this was Stephen Hawking just passed away last week, and the dude was brilliant. There's no doubting his mind and the things that he did in helping to further science and even philosophy. I'm not going to sit here and say he was a theologian or anything like that. He certainly wasn't, but he was definitely a philosopher. If you've read any of his writings, and I've got some quotes by him that I'm going to read in a little bit. But it's been bothering me to see these like Facebook pictures with him on it, and oh well, I guess he's no longer an atheist, or I guess now he knows the true theory of everything, and it's this like smug like, oh well, now you're getting what you deserve. You
told you so.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, Zach, like. First of all, and I know this is going to be difficult because you aren't like this and I'm not like this, but what do you think someone is thinking when they're putting something like that up there on social media?
I think what they're thinking is, I'm just going to say this. They're in an echo chamber. Mm-hmm. They use Facebook and social media and probably all the media they consume. I'm describing the average guy who's doing this stuff.
Sure.
All of it is just there to kind of reinforce their worldview. It's probably a very tenuous. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite locked into this. I want to believe it. And so I just, whether it's political and my news source is just going to keep on rehashing the same conspiracy theories or talking points, or whether it's theological and I have to listen to things that just I'm right. Mm. And there's no other reason, because that's absolutely not going to, it's not going to be winsome to an unbeliever. No unbeliever is going to look at that and go, huh, yeah, I'm going to die someday. I got to get right with God right now.
Yeah.
It's for other believers to all kind of snicker together.
Yeah.
And at the same time, when you texted me, we were thinking about talking about this a couple days ago. I remembered a time when I got dogpiled on a few years ago. You remember this guy Osama bin Laden?
Yeah.
And there was a time when President Obama sent some Navy SEALs and they shot him in the face.
Right.
and I was like, yes, we got him. And I was really stoked. And I remember like how much shame, it's crazy to me in a shameless society, how much shame is reserved for certain people. Mm-hmm. But like, I was made to I was very, very strongly encouraged to repent of that by people who would never repent, in their life, because there was this fake, totally fabricated MLK quote that was trotted around about, I'll mourn for the death of 1,000, but I won't celebrate the death of one evil person or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, no, I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to delete the post. I'm not going to back it, because this guy was literally a monster. Right. He killed thousands of people. In the Bible, not only in the Old Testament with like Sisera, do we have songs extolling how great it is that, he's got a nail through the head.
Right.
We got in the New Testament. Why do we know that Judas exploded after he hung himself? It's, a little reminder of God's justice. Yeah. Second use of the law is, push you toward the cross. In that way, me, Judas, bin Laden, we all deserve God's wrath equally. Mm-hmm. First use of the law, those who have the authority, God-given authority, hold back evil, and I was celebrating that good had been done.
Yeah. At
the same time, when I posted the joke, "Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?" Osama bin Laden, that was probably over the line. But whatever. So I kind of get the impetus.
Yeah.
But at the same time, obviously, this is not someone who was evil.
Right.
Any more than you or I, apart from Christ, are evil.
Right.
This is not someone who used his life to hurt people, rather he used his life to try and better mankind.
Yes.
And did you see this movie about him? Man, I can't believe from his early 20s, this horrific disease got a hold of him. Of course he lashed out to God. He didn't have an anchor of faith. What else would he do? Anyone would be tempted in that direction. Yeah. I don't understand why we think it's going to honor God in that case. And maybe you can tell me I'm being a little hypocritical and I have a double standard where I think we can high five when Osama bin Laden gets shot, but I don't think so. I think it's very different. I think that when I see stuff like Christopher Hitchens when he died, it was the same thing. It was the same people with the same memes, and they're just meant to smugly say to each other, aren't we awesome for being correct?
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think there is a difference between the celebration of another part of a war coming to an end, and that's what we see. I mean, when we step in and we look behind the curtain, ISIS is now our biggest threat, but it was bin Laden with the Taliban at one point, and we've done a job at going in and striking more at the Taliban and putting that war down. And I do think that's a good thing. And I think that is something that we can celebrate and rejoice in, that, this threat is no longer there, And so, like you said, our governments are there to protect us. They're there to ensure our safety. And so, when we see our soldiers going in, when we see our government going in and doing the job at protecting its people, at protecting its citizens, and I know a lot of people are going to get into, well, they're not protecting, people and citizens, blah, 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 but they're doing their job. I mean, the world is no longer sequestered to individual countries. We are operating in a world organization. Our economy is a world economy that we are dealing with and that we are interdependent on. And so we are involved, and that's where we are. We have to accept that, and we have to accept that, there are times and places where we go into other countries and we are fighting a war there. And so, to me, that's a celebration of the closing of another huge piece of that war. We're not at war with Stephen Hawking.
We're not at war with atheists.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at a spiritual war with maybe the spirit behind atheism,
right,
but it's not against flesh and blood.
Right.
I think that it's so easy, and we love it so much to put a face on the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's such a human instinct. And in some cases you can, if it's a different kind of war. The enemy is a terrorist organization led by this person. Okay, but as Christians, our primary battle is not that one. It's a much bigger, much more ancient battle that's been going on for ages, and it's against principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness of this world. And to say, "Ha ha, you're dead,"
right, to
a human who we should have been far more concerned that he didn't die apart from Christ.
Right.
And I guess we don't know, but every indicator is that he never repented in deathbed for conversion. It should break our hearts that we didn't try harder.
Yeah.
I feel like we've got this culture war, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but we got this culture war thing that we want to see people lose.
Yeah.
When in Christ there's an offer of salvation for all, we should want to see people saved. And we're never going to have revival in this land until we primarily want to see people saved, more than we want to win the argument on Facebook or gloat over somebody else's mortality.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like what we're ultimately doing when we do things like that is, we're essentially, first of all, final judgment is reserved for God, and like you said, like by all accounts, to the best that we know, he didn't. However, we don't know all things. We don't know what was going on in his mind, the last few months, days, year, of his life and things. And, there are quotes that he gave certainly within the last year suggesting that, no, he doesn't know God. But, look at the thief on the cross. The thief on the cross mocking Jesus, and then within a couple hours is like turning around and repenting.
Now the mocking one is the one who died apart from Christ, and according to the Passion of the Christ movie, and certain legends had his eyes plucked out. The guy who came to his defense, but still, he's obviously a hardened criminal,
right?
Not seeking to serve God,
right?
And I don't know. I see only a hairbreadth difference between the theory of everything now, meaning you're on your way to hell,
right?
And these Westboro clowns, outside of a funeral with a sign that says, this guy's in hell,
right?
And thank God for judgment. Everyone's favorite Bible verse outside of the church: "Judge not, lest ye be judged."
Yeah,
we can actually apply that pretty specifically when we, peel back and look at the Greek involved here. Not to get all pastory, but Jesus tells us to judge righteously. We're judging anytime we make a decision or show a preference of one, even good over evil. Mm-hmm. The Greek is krino. The thing we're not to do is kata krino, and the kata. It's a preposition, and it usually means down or against. Mm-hmm. And so basically, judging people down, it means to condemn them. Mm. And so to step in and say, like, I'm God, I'm the guy sitting on the throne or behind the judge's bench with the gavel, and I'm going to do this kind of final judgment.
Right.
That's not for us to do. In fact, one of my favorite parables, the parable of the wheat and the tares, right? We've got wheat, we got weeds. They're all in together. And the workers, that's us.
Yep.
We want to go in and we want to pull up all those rotten weeds, all the tares, and he says, right. No, we got to wait till the end. You'll pull up the wrong thing. The roots are enmeshed. They don't look completely different until they bear fruit. Just wait.
Right.
The harvesters, which are the angels of the last day, they'll take care of that.
Right.
So there's. I also am not a big fan of the super. Self-righteous, correct everybody. Right. We should all have a candle vigil. How dare you? I don't want to get down on anybody who might have posted one of these things. I've been known to do it myself.
Right.
There's a cultural frustration.
Sure.
Because this guy's been held up as a hero of the kind of new atheism, along with Hitchens and Dawkins and
right.
P.Z. Myers and all these guys. And now he's dead, and it's a reminder that there is a great mystery in death, and they have nothing to give you hope in
right.
light of it, but they'll just move right on. They'll
right.
move on from him to someone else. So for there to be a little desire to stay with him for a minute, hold on, let's remember this guy died, but there's a more winsome way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, when I think as Christians, sometimes, we get the idea that, because the world treats, I'm just going to say celebrities for lack of a better term, the world treats celebrities like this, where their lives are open books and we're allowed to, comment and make noise about them, that as believers, we're allowed to do the same thing. And we forget sometimes that we're called to something different, to weep with those who weep. If I'm weeping with, Hawking's family, whether they know it or not, and I don't mean necessarily a literal weeping, but, weeping, if he truly did not know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, then a part of me should be weeping that, this man, led this life. He had this extraordinary mind, and he never came face to face with Christ, and he never got that relationship with him. That's something to be sad about, not like clever and winsome in my expression of that.
Now it depends on how Calvinist you're going to get over here. I don't know how much of a exposure to the gospel he had,
mm-hmm.
but there's and I don't think you can say devil's advocate when you're making
right.
a Calvinist argument. But
right.
Right. if he did reject the gospel, then God is glorified in that as well,
Right.
because it's part of the indictment against the lost that they've heard the gospel and rejected it.
Right.
But from our point of view,
Right.
we don't go, vessel of wrath.
Right.
We weep because it's not the way it was supposed to be. Because sin, creation, fall, redemption, the fall and sin and suffering and death and everything that goes along with it is the part of the story that it just doesn't make sense. It's horrific, and it should never be like, that's good. Not from a Christian point of view where we say, don't weep today. Don't mourn for me. I am not here. Don't stamp your feet. I'm in the wind and the trees and no. That's paganism. Get away
Right.
from that.
Right.
Or from the kind of point of view where we say, this person had it coming. Well, we
Right.
all had it coming, right?
Right.
I mean, I had it coming. You had it coming.
Right.
The wages of sin is death. We're all going to die once, and the second death awaits everyone who is apart from Christ. And yeah, that's not good. That's
Yeah.
not. I got no more to say without repeating myself a bunch.
Yeah. Well, and I as I said, I have some quotes by Hawking, and some of these I find fascinating. And to me, again, like this shows the sadness of that mind. It also, it shows what God talks about. That He chose the foolish things of this earth to confound the wise. That the things that these geniuses hold up, they don't understand that. And to me, that's more sad than anything else. This one that I'm looking at, God may exist, but science can explain the universe without the need for a creator. As someone who teaches science, like I'm saddened and offended by that. Like, no, as a believer, I think science shows the creator that much more clearly. The fact that I understand the technicality behind rainbows work doesn't mean that rainbows become less spectacular to me. It doesn't mean that they're less significant in God's promise to Noah. To me, those things are enhancements. They're enhanced joys.
What a gift it is that we've been given the ability to see how He did.
Yeah. Not
just what He did, but how He did it. That He trusts us enough to let us look behind, and see what's going on. That's a wonderful, and that's what all of science up until the modern age,
right,
was all about, trying to think the thoughts of God after Him and see how the Creator had done things.
Yes. Well, and again, it's interesting because this next one that I'm going to read says, I'm just a child who has never grown up. I still keep asking these how and why questions. Occasionally I find an answer. And so, like, there is, even in His own words, there is a measure of searching. And again, going into, Calvinist theology, and I am a fan of Reformed theology. And, I don't mind talking to Reformed theologists about Reformed theology, but in the grander scheme of talking to the world and talking to people who, even other brothers and sisters in Christ who don't necessarily bend toward Reformed theology, there is something, when we read Scripture, that Christ doesn't give us all the ins and outs of the Reformed theology all at once. And there are things that He says and talks about that I think we can have conversations with people about, the accepting, the inviting, receiving Christ, and explain things in those, basic terms with people, without going into, the choosing when it comes to salvation. And I know that there are, Reformed people out there who would disagree with me on that, but as a believer, I'm totally comfortable with that, and then educating them on Reformed theology, how they truly, quote unquote, came to Christ. No, it wasn't really you coming to Christ, it was Christ coming to you. But from the perspective of us as people, sometimes it is more difficult, particularly outside of Christ, to see, well, it is impossible to see God's divine intervention in things, and so talking to people about these things. So, like when I see this quote from Hawking, like, I understand that, that God ultimately did not allow His eyes to be revealed to the truth. Again, assuming that he died not knowing Christ as his Savior, that God, kept him from that. And so I trust him in that plan. But at the same time, to me, it's sad that he never connected the dots, and that he wasn't allowed to connect the dots. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and the terms you're using to talk about these things, they'll vary on a spectrum for, within the Reformed tradition.
Yeah.
I tend to be a compatibilist, which means I don't see eternal election as being contradictory with human will. I mean, so I'll tell someone, you need to believe and repent. Mm-hmm. And when you even use the terms or the phrase "receive Christ,"
right?
That's used in John 1,
right?
It's to receive Him is to accept what He's given, and you want to do it, and you want to do it when He frees your will from the bondage of sin. When someone goes to the grave rejecting Christ's death as the propitiation for their sin, of course that's sad. Of course that's never something that we should be glib about.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like the crucifixion, in that it's one of these few things, even for a guy like me, who kind of, people who don't know me but kind of know me, you know what I mean? Like they've
Sure.
listened to one of my podcasts, or
Sure.
they've read some of this goofy stuff, I put out with Ted Clark or whatever. It's known that I tend to be a little irreverent in humor. I don't think we ought to ever make a joke about, like I saw a guy on Facebook the other day. It was the Last Supper, and it said, after dinner, Judas is taking me to see Nine Inch Nails. And it was a pastor who put it up, and it said some Lenten humor. And I was like, what? We're laughing at the death of Christ on the cross now?
Right.
And I think that right up there with that is, the notion of people being eternally separated.
Yeah.
I get real uncomfortable with jokes about someone going to hell, jokes about God's wrath. I think we try to be glib about it because it's such an overwhelming concept, but careful. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true, that I don't think the joke always needs to be made. I think we've come to this point of, as a culture, where all silence is uncomfortable. And I that's one of the things that I so appreciate about the way people overseas mourn and grieve, is there isn't the need to say something. When somebody passes away, when someone dies, you go and you just sit with that person and you be with that person, and you never feel like you have to say anything or do anything. It's just it's being a shoulder to cry on if they need it. It's being an ear for them to bend if they need it. But you're there for their mourning and their grieving. You're not there to try to make yourself feel better by saying something or doing something.
Well, you got to quote Romans 8:28, but other than that,
yeah.
No, overseas, nothing anywhere. That's the best. That's the best way that you can minister to someone in their grief.
Oh yeah.
Sit there and cry with them.
Yeah.
And be with them. And I think you've really, that's very astute, man. That's what you're describing in terms of our response to a lot of these things. It just shows our discomfort with just kind of sitting there in the face of death.
Yeah.
And having nothing to say other than what a tragedy. And of course it's a tragedy that this brilliant mind that was created in the image of God never found its actual purpose of glorifying Him with all that brilliance.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit here, because I feel like we are coming kind of close to just kind of circling with this. One of the other things that I noticed, Billy Graham died. Was Hawking and Graham within a week of one another? Do you remember?
Yeah, or a couple.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I noticed was, let's make a national holiday for Billy Graham and, Billy Graham Day or whatever it is. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about Billy Graham's life because I think here's another example of an extraordinary life. I think there's another example of somebody who touched people on so many levels. And I see a lot of that going around too, where people are like, well, look at the difference between Billy Graham and Stephen Hawking. And I'm fine not comparing them because, Billy Graham was a believer. And so the impact that he had as a believer with the platform he had was obviously going to be very different than the impact that Hawking had as an atheist. And so I don't feel the need to justify where the two are and what's going on. I want to focus more on the idea of let's make a Billy Graham national holiday. What are your thoughts on that, Zach? Because I've got some of my own, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
No way, man. Billy Graham was a 33rd degree Mason and a Universalist, so he's burning right next to Hawking and all the rest of them. A little bit of that's been in my feed lately too. Let me start by going on record to say there are very few people I admire more in the world than Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Even though he walked away from the Calvinism and went full on Phineas in his methodology. You know what? That guy was just like the epitome of humble, yeah. I'm at your service, God.
Yeah.
Do what you will. Through me, with me, I'm yours.
Yeah.
And, you say you don't want to compare him to Hawking, but this just popped into my head. Mm-hmm. I have a few documentaries about Billy Graham's life. That's how into him I am. I've got
nice.
And I'm suspect because I got him next to a couple documentaries, probably 3 about John Paul, too. But and some people would think that was very fitting. But he at one point there's a rock next to which he made a vow that if any doubt or any question about the veracity of Scripture or God's word ever came into his mind, that he would just immediately banish it. Mm. Which, if you think about it, it's kind of the opposite of what Hawking said.
Right.
He's always still asking why and how, and if, maybe those two guys could have learned an awful lot from each other.
Yeah.
And I think probably both of them were humble enough where they could have.
Yeah. Yeah.
That said, I don't know. I know quite a bit about Billy Graham's life. I don't think he would want to be celebrated with a national holiday. I don't think it would freak him out either. He knew that he was a significant guy. How many men have been the spiritual counselor to multiple presidents?
Yes.
And just seeing so many people come to faith. And so I don't know if we're going to have, Cesar Chavez Day and we're going to have all this stuff that we have. Why not a Billy Graham? I know I'm at odds with you here, but I actually think it would be kind of a cool thing. And it would show that our culture isn't completely trying to scrub, our Christianity that's woven into the right. fabric of the nation. Scrub it out, and I'd love it. I really would.
See, and it's interesting that you say that because I think what you said is absolutely true. That it would be very interesting if it happened to be seeing the tone and the nature of where culture is. I always find it interesting when certain officials are elected into offices. Not so much that I think, now we've arrived as a nation and we're getting back on track to where we need to be. To me, it's more, yeah. Gina. Wrong. It's more interesting and telling to me that group of people as a majority have decided that this person's a good idea to have them in office. And as believers, ultimately we know that our comfort in anyone who's elected, ultimately it comes from God, that he places all leaders, all authorities in their positions. No one is there without him. But it's interesting and telling to me that, we had, I guess it was 3 years ago now, our governor went from a very liberal person who, as far as I knew, was not a believer, to a conservative person who is a outspoken believer. And to me, it wasn't like, all right, now we're going to get Maryland back on track again. Well, since this conservative, believing mayor has been or governor has been in office, homosexuality has been legalized. That was passed and legalized and ratified and all that stuff. But
wait a minute, homosexuality was illegal in Maryland until recently?
Marriage. Marriage.
Ah, okay.
Marriage. Yeah. Sorry, at this point in like my life cycle, whenever I refer to anything being legalized with homosexuality, it's like marriage, because I don't know anywhere where homosexuality itself is illegal in any of the states.
Well, there are sodomy laws all over the place. They're just not enforced.
Right.
It's an odd situation where you have communities keeping that on the books because principle, and then you have the county clerks issuing these what interesting times to live in.
Yes.
I'm sorry though, I interrupted you. Go on.
No. But to me, it was it's not a sign of like, oh, he's going to come in and everything's going to be good because he's a Christian. But it was interesting that in a very liberal state like Maryland, that a conservative Christian was put into office, and so clearly on some level the people were wanting a change. And again, I know that God is the one who puts all authority there, but to me it's interesting that the people were interested in this change coming about. And so when you were talking about, it would be interesting to see the leaders and their decision to do this, because Billy Graham, who is a very conservative, Southern pastor, but was just beloved by so many people. And so I think it would be interesting from that perspective. The only thing I think about honoring the man properly is, I remember going through and taking the Billy Graham Museum tour down in North Carolina. I think this was about 5 years ago, and basically reading about how he did not want this thing put up there. He did not want people to be able to, honor him in that way. And the only reason he agreed to it is when you come to the end of the tour, it's like a 10-minute gospel presentation that you have to sit and listen to before you can leave. And so, he agreed to it based on that component of it. But that was kind of my only thought and pushback, is like knowing that about him, where, he's got the Billy Graham library and how much he didn't want that. I don't necessarily think this is the proper way in which to honor this man in that capacity.
Sure. But any humble person isn't going to, think that they deserve their own holiday. And if it's a post-mortem type thing, which 99% of the time a holiday, not 100% really.
Right.
I mean, Rosa Parks wouldn't have wanted, all sorts of stuff named after her. She deserves to have it named after her because of the incredible impact who she has had on our country. Sure. And I would say in a similar way, sure, he probably wouldn't have wanted it because, anyone who would be like, yes, give me a day, they don't deserve one, right? But I mean, really, it's for us. It's like a funeral.
Yeah.
People are like, well, Dad wouldn't have necessarily wanted this. Okay, we want to respect who Dad was, but is this something the family needs? Because Dad doesn't need this funeral. He's right. He's in heaven.
Right.
You guys are still here, and I think it would be, I don't know. To me, it would just be a really nice, refreshing, like, oh, that happened. That doesn't make me die a little inside, whereas the rest of the news today does.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And you and I were actually talking briefly about that. About 2 hours from where I teach, there was a school shooting and school evacuation. We are at some point, we tease this. You and I talked about this. We didn't tease this, but you and I talked about this, about talking about shootings and gun control and things like that. You felt, probably wisely so, that your first one wasn't necessarily the best one to come in guns blazing, no pun intended there.
I'm the new host. Kill them all. Let God sort of.
America.
Oh, dude, I hate that. Let's put that on the docket, too. That's one of my pet peeves.
Can we, though, read the America tweets? Have you ever read those?
No.
Oh, my gosh. We got to find those, and we got to read those for that one. There are like all these sayings and tweets, and then like at the end of all of them, it's like America.
I'm sure I've heard a lot of them. I've seen a lot of memes and stuff with that, and I don't know. It seems to be entitled millennials that often, want to make light of. I get it.
Right.
But let's save that for another time.
We'll save that for another day.
Billy Graham, though, man. I really think if we had a day like that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we honestly, with MLK, we've got a day already devoted to a Baptist minister.
Right.
So it wouldn't be unprecedented.
Yeah.
If we had a day like that and it kept his memory, I mean, the young people today don't remember him preaching. I remember watching those Billy Graham movies on the huge screen at church. The only times we'd be at church when it was dark outside, and then we'd turn the lights off in the sanctuary, and it would be like being at the movie theater.
Yeah.
I remember one that was like whitewater rafting and stuff, and there would always be a 20-minute Billy Graham sermon in the middle.
Yep.
And I remember feeling just goosebumps from this guy's preaching.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good thing to do whatever we can to keep that phenomenon in our collective memory and remember that. And yeah, I know there's, he had a huge rate of people backsliding and maybe his methods were more consumeristic than some people like. Whatever. The way he won millions of people to Christ is better than the way that I don't win millions of people to Christ.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. In my mind, if we can keep that memory alive even a little longer and inspire some more people to just want to devote themselves and say, God, whatever you can do, whether you use me to win 10 people or 10,000 or whatever, I'm here just like this guy was here. I feel like do you feel like we're missing that in the church? Like,
yeah,
no one's looking for that next great, I don't think we want the next Billy Graham, quote unquote, but it used to be that's what we were waiting for. Who's going to be the next Billy Graham? When's this? Where's all the passion?
Right.
And I feel like it's kind of eked away now, that urgency.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is, we've so divided and divided in evangelical denominations too. It's not even like, the PCA and the PCUSA divided because, there were fundamental biblical differences that like, oh no, let's have a homosexual woman pastor up there behind the pulpit preaching. It's like, oh yeah, you dunk and you sprinkle, and so we're not really compatible like that. And I feel like a lot of those things have just kind of moved away from really getting to a point where, like, as churches, we could come together and be united on that front. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, along those lines, back then, everybody, I mean, I'm sure there were some fundies somewhere, and there were some really hard left people who didn't like the exclusivism that he preached. But for the most part, Christians could all come together in an arena and be like, Billy Graham, we're in.
Right.
And today you've got, this group is like, yeah, we're excited about Paul Washer. These people over here are excited about Joyce Meyer. These people, who's the one person that everybody, can just say, oh, that's the gospel, that basic old story of Jesus and his cross. And we can all be on board.
Right.
I feel like that's what makes Billy Graham it just makes his legacy so great.
Right. Yeah. And he did. He was so, a lot of people complain about, like you said, that consumerism. But to me, like, the dude was just really smart when it came to technology, where so many people were shunning it and pushing it away. It was like, hey, God's given us the ability, instead of preaching in an arena to, 10,000 people, we can preach in the same arena, have a camera going, and be preaching to 40,000 people all around the world. So why not take advantage of it?
As recent as 3 years ago with the Super Bowl halftime thing.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Did you do that at all?
I don't think I did. No. I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, Vince! It was like a Billy Graham message to play in the context of like a Super Bowl church party, and they were just AOL CD-ROMing this thing, like shoving them into every crevasse anyone would have these things, these DVDs to play. And again, it was just like at halftime, there's a tie-in, there's some decent graphics, and then we launch into this old Billy Graham, giving
Nice.
the gospel, giving the call. And yeah, we can all get all theologically smug about, well, the altar call was invented as the anxious bench and blah. You got to give a call.
Right.
I mean, Jesus gave a call.
Right.
Follow me.
Right.
The apostles gave a call. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, or Romans 10:9. Confess with your lips Jesus Christ is Lord. Believe in your heart God raised him from the dead.
Right.
And man, he did that with just. I wish I had that boldness. I wish I had a fraction of the boldness with which he stood up there without any sense of, well, people are going to think I'm stupid, or,
Right.
well, no. He knew he was doing what God called him to do. What a great man.
Well, and I mean, I'll speak to myself on this too. I know for me personally, I could never do that, and part of that is because I have that. You talked about, Billy Graham having that, humility, but he was also a very soft and gentle and loving person where, people were drawn to him in that capacity. I know for me personally, I am not, cute and cuddly like that. Like I am the sarcastic, like, I mean, my students get a kick out of me, but like if I try to like get in front of people and just be that genuine and sincere the way he is, or the way he was, I should say, it just that's what we need. It wasn't just a matter of the gospel and his passion for it, but his temperament was also such that lent him to being open to people and embracing people in that capacity, and that's something that I wish I had, but I just I know I don't.
Well, yeah, and it's in short supply now,
right?
And you get into spiritual gift stuff,
yeah.
But there's also the divisiveness you were talking about, or divisiveness, however you want to pronounce it. Here's a metaphor for the whole thing. I reposted on Facebook this really cool cartoon or comic.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of political cartoon type thing, and it was just Billy Graham, he's kind of short and hunched over. He's still an old man, even though he's in heaven, bringing up, whatever kind of theological debates. But he's just hugging Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I saw it, and I also am very sarcastic and jaded. I got like choked up just looking at this thing.
Yeah.
And I just reposted it. I thought people will, think it's nice, and a lot of people did. And then one guy has to say, well, that is a second commandment violation because Jesus. And I'm like, okay, you're kind of missing the point, but you're also making a greater point. That if there's any little thing in here that we can differ over secondary doctrines,
right,
that's what we'll focus on now,
right,
rather than focusing on what holds us together, which is a cross.
Yeah. And I think, if we as the church can get together and we can make better strides to being, in my opinion, to being like, what, when we're in our individual church buildings with our members, and I am the leader of my congregation, these are kind of the things that we do in-house in family. These are kind of family things that we do. But when we're out in the greater Christian community, these are the things that, as long as we're able to focus on the cross of Christ, and work to that end. Now, obviously, that's not all, but if that is our focus, then let's strive to show the world unity. That even though we disagree in these matters that are more internal family matters, that when we come together as the larger body of Christ, we are able to work together to bring the gospel to people.
Yeah, well, that might be a topic for a whole episode, man.
Yeah.
Ecumenism and how, where you draw the line, who's in, how big a tent you pitch, what's the hills we got to die on, and what hills, So that's for me, has been a frustration I've had throughout my ministry, that people are all too ready to go to one extreme or the other. Yeah. One is doctrine doesn't matter at all as long as we all use the J word. Right. Let's not divide at all. Let's just all be kumbaya.
Right.
Or if we don't all, if we're, what's the old Emo Phillips sketch where the guy's going to jump off the bridge and someone comes along? You remember this? And he's like, well, are you religious? Yes. Well, are you Catholic or Protestant? I'm Protestant. Are you Baptist or Methodist? I'm Baptist. And he gets all the way down to, they're both the same, all the way down to like, are you 1981 confession or 1963? Well, 1963. And then he pushes him off the bridge. Die, heretic scum, die!
Oh, man. It is. It's so true. And I that would be a great topic. I'm looking forward. We're gonna sign off here. We're kind of running a little late, but not terribly late. But looking forward to next week. And this is the first time you're going to be hearing this, Zach. I want to talk about Holy Week as we are coming into Easter, and so maybe trying to wrap our minds around that, and put some things out there for our listeners, preparing their hearts for this time, because I think like you were talking about with Billy Graham, having that time set aside that we could remember. I think this is a perfect time for us as believers to set aside to remember. I think sometimes people look at certain things and they're willing to throw the T word down, tradition, but I think traditions can be good, as long as they don't slip into legalism. Tradition can be a good thing. And so I want us to be able to think through those things, going into that week next week. So any final thoughts or comments before we head off?
If I said anything to anger anyone, just tweet to Nathan and buy a T-shirt.
That's right.
Leave an iTunes. You know how you could really show me? Leave an iTunes review, 5 stars.
That's right. Or even leave 1 star and write about how much you hate it, but just write something. We'll
really?
take that too.
Even you'd rather have someone leave a 1 star and write some text than not do anything.
Yep.
Really?
Yep. Because in terms of how iTunes boosts your ratings, it's more important that you get the writing than it is that you get the stars. I mean, now clearly you don't want 100 1-star reviews and 3 5-star reviews, but having that writing in there actually boosts you further along the ratings line than not the ratings line, but the search line than just having stars up there. So,
interesting.
Yep.
Do you ever read people's reviews on the air?
No, I haven't. I was listening to the latest one that you and Ted did. And you guys were reading some of yours, and I thought that actually might be cool if we did that, wrapping up this whole thing we're doing where people are leaving reviews. So we'll have, if we have, a selection of those reviews to read publicly. So, yeah.
So leave us reviews, and we might make fun of your grammar and spelling. Publicly,
or just you in general. I mean, we're not picky.
We'll find something.
That's right. Oh man, dude, this was great as always. Looking forward to next week. Right now, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Zach, we just rocked the Casbah.
These go to 11.